Well, hello, it's Crazy Cheap Chick, and today I'm doing something a little different. My husband and I came over to Manhattan, Kansas on kind of a date day, and one of the things I asked him if we could do was go buy a house that I knew that Gloria Vanderbilt lived in at one point. Yes, that Gloria Vanderbilt, the one that we had plastered on our rear ends back in the 80s. I was reading this book that was written by her and her son, and it was kind of like letters back and forth to them when she was getting older. And she was telling stories from her life. And one of the things that happened, I never knew she had a Kansas connection, but she did live in Kansas very briefly. So I'm just going to briefly tell you a little history from Gloria Vanderbilt's early life. Everybody kind of knows the story of the poor little rich girl and the big custody battle. But Gloria's mother, whose name was also Gloria, she got married in her late teens, and she married a Vanderbilt who was in his 40s. And not that long after Gloria was born, she was little Gloria, she was probably a toddler, her dad died. Liver disease. I think he was a pretty severe alcoholic. So her mother inherited a lot of money, and she's very young and has a little girl. And so she takes off to Europe, kind of becomes a party girl. And the custody battle ensued because while mom's out partying, she leaves her with her mother and the nanny. And that's who Gloria really bonded with, especially her nanny, who she called Dodo. Well, the custody battle was all about, really the nanny and grandmother kind of manipulated her into writing some letters that got her aunt involved, thinking that she wasn't being cared for properly. And then during the custody trial, it became very scandalous because the French maid insinuated that the mother was having a lesbian relationship. Well, long and short of it is she ended up with her aunt. Her aunt cared for her, but she wasn't a warm and fuzzy person. And so Gloria just grew up she didn't get a lot of love. She had a lot of money, but she didn't get any hugs. And that kind of messes you up. And so as a result, she wasn't happy at her aunt's either. I mean, she just ended up in boarding schools and fancy schools. She lost the one person that she really cared for because she really cared for the nanny. And in that custody battle, I believe the judge said the nanny couldn't be involved any longer. And so, it was a hard time for her, a lot of childhood trauma there. Well, she kind of got tired, I think, of being in all these boarding schools. She did have visitation with her mom. Her mom had moved out to Hollywood. And so she would go visit her mom and hang out with all these famous people and date them. And so she dated Errol Flynn, and she dated Howard Hughes. In fact, Howard Hughes really wanted to marry her, it sounds like. But she ended up marrying a really bad guy. His name was Pasquale de Cisco, I think that's right, Pasco de Cisco. And they called him a talent agent, but really I think he was kind of associated with maybe some organized crime. And she was 17 when they got married, and he was like 31. And it turns out she just wanted someone to love her and to get out from under these women's thumbs and have her own life. But she married a guy who was all wrong. Howard Hughes was not showing the crazy quite yet. He was a pretty decent guy at that time, and wealthy, whereas this guy, he didn't have anything. He just wanted her money, and he was a gold digger and a bully, mean. He was very, very abusive to her, physically and mentally. And after they got married, maybe there was a little bit of a honeymoon period, because they got married about 1941, and then Pearl Harbor happened. And he joined the military, joined the Army, and he was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. Well, she came with him and stayed in a rented house in Manhattan. And so that's what I'm going to go show you today, is the house that she lived in. Now, this has been almost 100 years ago, so this house is not in the condition it was when she lived there. It's really gone downhill. And they have changed the name of the street, so it took a little bit of research for me to find the house, but we found it. And I'll show you some pictures that I found online in its glory days, and the inside of the house that I found online. But I'm going to walk by the house right now just so you can see the house. They've painted it. It's in a little bit rough shape, but you can tell that this neighborhood was a really nice neighborhood, probably back in the 1940s. And I think she lived in this house for 3 to 5 months. Some sources say 3 months, some sources say 5 months. Not very long, but for a very brief period of time, Gloria Vanderbilt, of Gloria Vanderbilt genes, lived in this house. And I think that's kind of a cool Kansas connection, even though I'm sure it wasn't a very happy time for her. Her husband used to like to make fun of her weight. She wasn't fat, but he used to call her fat, and he would hit her and be very abusive. So she kind of went from the pot to the fire, so to speak. But let's get out and go take a look at the house. Okay, this neighborhood's in decline, but you can tell that probably back in the 40s, this was a pretty fancy neighborhood for Manhattan, Kansas. And the house is down here. It's on a pretty busy street now, and you can see right down the street, that's the K-State campus. So she was really within walking distance of the campus. And that's the house right there. Of course, it would have looked a lot different back then. In fact, since she was under 21, she hadn't gotten her inheritance yet. So she lived on a stipend, and she got in a little financial trouble while living in this house. And after her husband finished his basic training, they went to Texas, and she left her furniture behind, and they confiscated it because she hadn't paid all her bills. Eventually she did pay those bills and she got her furniture back, but she had a little bit of legal trouble while living in this house. And she also had some personal problems. I'm sure she'd already figured out pretty quickly after marrying this guy that he was no good. And like I said, this would have looked a lot different in 1941. This would have been a fancy area and a fancy house. Yeah, it kind of looks like it's a rental house now, probably for, university students. I think those pots may have used to sit down here. I think I saw them in a picture. That's just kind of cool to me. Now you can tell over here, this is a brand new building. They've just built university housing because the university is so close. It'd be cool to think of Gloria Vanderbilt walking in that front door, maybe getting some groceries and coming in the side door. She was just a young housewife wanting to live a normal life with her new husband. Another person that followed their husband out to the training base was Jean Tierney. And who knows, maybe Jean came and visited Gloria in this house. And those might have been the big fancy pots that used to sit at the front door. Imagine one of these windows on the back would have been her bedroom. I wonder if she had a victory garden planted in the back here. This house is in very good shape now. I'm sure this was all yard and garden back then. but it looks like students are probably living here and not taking good care of the place. Last time it was listed, though, I think it listed for $342,000. This would have been a little bit different than the mansion she had been living in, though for the time period, this would have been a really nice house. Now, I'm in the back alley right now, and when you walk down here, these houses have been kept up. And so this is just catty-cornered from her house, and I'm sure this is more what the neighborhood would have looked like in her day. Nicely kept homes like this on street-lined streets. No one's coming to the door. It definitely looks like the original door, though. Getting a lot of glare, but it's a wooden door with leaded glass. These are some pictures of the inside of the house that I found on the internet. Of course, it looks like the house has gone through a remodel probably in the 1980s, but it still holds a lot of the same charm that it had when Gloria lived here. And you can see, according to the listing, that the buzzers were added during her brief stay here. She would have lived here 3 to 5 months. I'm not quite sure how long. It depends on which reference you use. This is the outside of the home, and it has this lovely screen porch. I can just imagine her sitting out here catching a breeze before air conditioning. Then the large formal living room has that gorgeous bow window, and it just gives it that air of sophistication. Very large room with some really nice woodwork, large opening out to the staircase. And this fireplace, what do you think about that parquet? Do you think it was original, or do you think it was a later addition? The fireplace was probably there. And then I love all the woodwork, those big, heavy, probably oak doors, and you can see into the formal dining room. Really nice. Just imagine her descending the staircase in the morning and coming down for breakfast, or maybe she used that buzzer that she had installed when she lived there to ask her maid to bring her breakfast to her. Now, this is the formal dining room. It has that large chandelier that I would imagine is probably original. It looks period to me. And then it has a lot of built-ins throughout the house, and I imagine this is in the formal dining room as kind of a china hutch, and it looks like it looks into the probably the kitchen seating area or formal dining room. The kitchen looks pretty original to me. It's kind of cut up strange, but those cabinets look really original to me. The wood floors look original to me. And if you look at that detail over the kitchen sink, that kind of Art Deco cutout, that looks like it was probably original. And then you can see into the little sit-in kitchen. And this house has 5 bedrooms. And this is, I believe, the master or primary bedroom suite. Has those big windows that look over the backyard, really pretty. This house has a lot of windows. And perhaps she had a maid or someone to help her that lived in one of those 5 bedrooms, because at the time she stayed here, it was only her and her husband. I love this little vanity that's built on the back of the door to the closet. So when you open the closet, you have that place to sit and do your makeup. And the house has a lot of its original hardware, which houses of this period oftentimes have lost that hardware by this time. Here's another one of the bedrooms. They're all large. Looks like it has a mirrored door on it, which would have been unusual. Not sure what this is. It looked kind of like a closet area to me, but I've never actually been inside the house, so I'm not sure. And here's another one of the bedrooms. Large, the big oak doors and woodwork there on the floor. Another bedroom. Those curtains to me almost look like they're from the 40s, though I'm sure they're newer than that. Another bedroom. Of course, I wouldn't have been painting them those really dark colors back in the 40s. That would not have been in style at all. And it looks like they've painted the woodwork white. But look at that bathroom. It looks original to me. That blue tile and all of those fixtures just scream 1930s or 40s. Looks like it even has a little built-in shower. Anyway, it's a very nice home in a nice area. Well, I'm going to take a little walk up the neighborhood just so you can get a sense of what it was probably like when she lived here. So if she wanted to take a walk, these are the houses she would have walked by. And I don't know, most of them look like they date from maybe the 20s or 30s. So here I am at the Manhattan, Kansas Old Rail Depot. And in the book that I was telling you about, The Rainbow Comes and Goes by Anderson Cooper and Gloria Vanderbilt, where they were basically emailing each other back and forth, and she was sharing stories from her life. He was asking questions and she was answering them. Very interesting. But anyway, one of the experiences that she shares is she says, because I told you she's in a rough marriage. She married a louse. The first time I remember having a glimmer of belief in myself was when I was riding on a train back to Junction City after a visit to Los Angeles. I'm pretty sure she meant Manhattan. And the reason I say that is she lived in Manhattan. She didn't live in Junction City. And earlier in the book, she had said she lived in Junction City. She did not. There's all kinds of evidence that she lived right here in Manhattan. And she's older, and I think she just got the two towns confused because Junction City was the Army town nearest of the base, which was Fortriley, where her husband was. And she probably would not have been living there. I doubt there would have been any place in that little tiny town nice enough for her to live in. She would have been in Manhattan, Kansas, which is 15, 20 miles away from Fort Riley. So anyway, I'm going to turn this around and show you the train station, and then I'll read you the rest of the story. Well, it's super windy today, but this is the train station, and I think it's like an event center now, but pretty sure this is the building that she would have been referring to in the story, which I'll read you the rest of it here in a minute. But I wanted you to kind of have a setting for where this probably took place, because I really don't think she was going back to Junction City. I think she was probably returning to Manhattan, since that's where she was living. And you know, when we recount stories that happened 50, 60 years ago, we tend to get some of the details a little mixed up. And this is a pretty minor detail, whether this occurred at this train station or another. But I really feel strongly this is probably the train station where this event occurred. Pretty cool old train station, though. Okay, I'm just going to sit down on these stairs and I'm going to read you the story. It's super windy, but I'm going to try to read it. The first time I remember having a glimmer of belief in myself was when I was riding on a train back to Junction City after a visit to Los Angeles. In the seat across from me sat an older man, and next to him, his son. I was immersed in Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice when suddenly I heard my name. I looked up from my book, but the men continued their conversation. Clearly obvious that the person they were gossiping about was sitting just an arm's length away. So sad, that Vanderbilt girl, just a kid from such a well-known family, with so much to look forward to. Why didn't someone do something? Stop her from marrying a gigolo, clearly after her money. My face stinging, I wanted to bolt out of the compartment and jump off the train, but I just sat there, paralyzed. I remember she's like 18 years old, because she was 17 when she got married, and they were divorced before she was 21, because probably didn't want him to get her money. People say DeSisco murdered his first wife, that actress, Thelma Todd. Wonder how he got Gloria to marry him. She's just a kid in her teens, and he's so much older, in his 30s. I continued to sit with my head down in my book as they chatted on about my mother, saying hurtful things, and Auntie Gurr. She came out swell. But always returning to DeCisco and me. Surely she can only come to a bad end starting out like that. Would I come to a bad end? It frightened me to hear it said out loud, so evident, even to strangers. Can you imagine being a young woman and hearing someone talking about you and not realizing it was you? We arrived in Junction City, and like I said, I think she meant Manhattan, and stood in a long line, slowly making our way off the train. Do I dare? Do I have the courage? I tapped the older man on the shoulder, and he turned around. I'm Gloria Vanderbilt, I said. He was speechless. His face dissolved in embarrassment, as it should, and dismay. His sons as well. I thought they both might faint. For me, though, there was a feeling of hope. I'd made a decision and the guts to speak up for myself for the first time. So, was the train pulling in the station when she tapped on his shoulder and told him, did it happen right here? I think it probably did. So with that train whistle in the background, let's just take a moment and imagine Gloria Vanderbilt as a young woman stepping off a train as it comes to a stop here in Manhattan, tapping the man on the shoulder and saying, hey, it's me you're talking about. And many, many years later, she still remembered it. It was a turning point in her life. Well, friends, thanks for watching the video all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video about Gloria Vanderbilt's time in Kansas. If you did, let me know, and I will make more videos about interesting things that have a Kansas connection. Or you can just say, stick to your grocery videos. I'm okay with that too. But if you do like these kind of stories, or you like to save money, don't forget to subscribe. That helps me out a lot, and it'll help you not miss a video. Have a great evening. I'll talk to you soon.